Ah, yes, hello dears. So we hope you're all settled and you're feeling quite well. So we're going to go for quite a stretch here, so if you feel like you need to pop out, go right ahead, but there's so much information that we really don't want to take another break. So we're going to go for a solid 2 hours, so we hope that you all fare well. So there are a couple things that we want to clarify and make sure that you all understand. One of those things is about intent. As we were listening to some of the conversations that were going on throughout lunchtime, hearing all of you talk about what you heard and experienced, intent is something that we want to clarify. Focused desire is what we're talking about. It is the excitement of creation that is in your field. That is also intent. And how amplified the signal is when you're talking about manifestation determines in your level of reality, in the third dimensional version of reality, how quickly it manifests, how strong it is, how strong that desire, that focus is. So intent or focused desire is paramount in anything that you're manifesting or creating, whether you're using sound or not. In your visualizations of what you want to create for yourself, or whether you're creating a sound that's got the intent of manifesting something, it doesn't matter. But it is your focused desire. The other thing that we think that there's still some confusion about is sound and inaudible sound. And they're not really any different. But we have to use the framework that you've got for your mind right now. So we've got to try and put things in concepts that you can understand. But those concepts don't really carry over to the higher realms. Because we give you concepts you can lock your mind around, but they are really an illusion, so they fall apart in the higher realms. They're not really how things are at all. So we try and bridge the gap. So what you consider to be sound, what you process through your body as frequencies enter into your field, you interpret them in a particular way. You either interpret them as light, you perceive it through your eyes, you perceive it as sound, all right, or you perceive it in a way that your skin, you feel the vibration on your skin, all right, through your touch. And then there's frequency that's taste, but we're talking about mouth closed and everything else you get for your eyes, your ears, and your touch. So sound itself is nothing but a particular kind of frequency. In the higher realms, nothing is really heard in the way that you experience it because not all beings have the same kind of vehicle, and they don't interpret frequency through their vehicle as what you consider to be sound. They interpret it as sometimes color, right? Sometimes they interpret it as just a feeling or a sensation. It's interpreted differently depending on which kind of vehicle you're occupying. In the higher realms, also, when you talk about inaudible sound, and we talk about manifestation and intent and focus, and using sound or a vibration to create at that level, it's just about a frequency, a particular kind of frequency that you are focused on. It's not that someone's there and going, is that the right sound? It doesn't work that way. All right. In the lower realms, you might interpret it as sound. Up here, it's all vibration to us. It's a particular kind of vibration. All right. Light waves are slightly different. The structure is slightly different. And they move differently. The frequencies move differently. But they coexist, and they are also in different ranges. They're in different ranges. But again, throughout all of them, through the harmonic laws, they are below and above where you perceive them. All right? They continue out as you get them to vibrate, as you focus on one, and if you work with the harmonics of it. Light has a harmonic value to it as well that you can activate and you activate different frequencies. And sound can be used to manipulate light, but that's done at the highest levels, because you've got to understand how the molecules, the energy interacts. And your physicists haven't really discovered that. They don't really understand that just yet. They think they're completely separate, but they're not. They're all combined. They're all combined, and they're all interwoven. When you understand the underlying matrix of what sustains and connects all of us, that's when you can really manipulate them and get them to interact. All right? Are you all still with us? Take a nice deep breath. We're talking about a lot of things that are very unfamiliar to some of you. Some of you, you're a little more familiar than others, but it's all new. And so some of these ideas and concepts are harder to grasp. But when you can't get it in your mind, what we ask that you do is to see that piece of information as a ball of white light and drop that light into your heart. Because the mind is the filter for the third dimensional experience. The heart is the filter for the multi-dimensional experience. And a lot of what we're giving you is multi-dimensional in nature. And it can't really be processed through the mind aptly. You can get bits and pieces of it, but the whole enchilada, as it were, has to be processed through the heart. All right? So don't worry if you feel like you're not getting it all, because we're depositing informational packets into your field as well, and those will continue to unfold over the coming days, weeks, months, and for some of you, years, because you will hear it, but you won't really live it. You won't experience it. You may theorize it, you may understand it, but you're not being it, you're not experiencing it.
Do we have to repeat it, or is it just in?
The information, no, it's downloaded, it's in your energetic field. We've done our work. We've done our homework. And your own guides are here helping you. Each and every one of you has a guide beside you right now who is working on you energetically. Something that is a little perk of the lecture. And for those who listen on tape, the same thing will happen. Their guides will step forward and work on them energetically as they listen to this recording. Because what you're getting is so different from what you've been told or how you perceive it to be in the first place. So it is altering. It's very, very altering. All right. So before we go on into some new arenas, talking about sound and light and sound as keys and activations, we want to see if there's anything, any other questions that you had from the first couple hours. No? No questions? All right.
I do have one question. When you say manifesting sound, in the fifth dimension and above, you just manifest as opposed to attracting it.
Yes.
Through the laws of attraction.
Yes.
As we do in this dimension. I was just wondering, when you said in the other realms, you simply manifest. I was just wondering how that correlates to our talk about when you, I think it was in the beginning, briefly described how sound and sound manifestation works. This thing about pushing on the pushing and then eventually creating, in the snowplow metaphor and so on. How does these things correlate to the just manifesting? Is it the same?
Well, the manifestation process, it's the same, but we kind of think of it as the snowplow as a slow motion version. Right now when you think of a word, you don't think, oh, I have to attract the thought to create the word. You just create it. You just say it. It's there. That's what it's like to manifest in the higher realms. Do you all understand the analogy?
Yeah.
All right? What we're giving you is the process that happens in between the impulse or the vibration that is generated and all the chemical reactions that happen in the brain before the words come out. It's that impulse. It's first a vibration. It's always first and foremost a vibration of what you want to communicate or get across. It's a vibration. And then from that vibration, it echoes out, and in front of you is what you are manifesting. So the snowplow is a slow version of what happens in that instant that you have that desire. Before you speak a word or have a thought, you put out a pulse.
So the main difference between these realms and the 3D is that we have a buffer of time before it happens.
Exactly. Exactly. And that buffer of time really allows you the opportunity to manifest or not manifest something. As we were discussing earlier, what happens when you're not getting what you want? Sometimes it's not the vibrational match. It's not really what you desired to create at the deepest level. All right, so it's not arriving. Sometimes if you were in a lot of anger and you were to immediately manifest, that wouldn't really be something that most of you would say consciously you wanted to experience. So there is a lag time, so you get to play around with that and understand emotions and impulses and pulsations of frequency. So you get to learn how to work with it. That's what you're all doing right now as you get in the higher realms, as you start to enter into the higher realms, is to really know where you're vibrating at any given moment. That's why we say so often it is paramount that you start living in the now. Because you've got to know where you're vibrating at every single moment, because you're going to create it. Think about what you would create instantly with all your thoughts, with those negative thoughts that fly through. So you're integrating all those negatives in with the positives, so that what you create, you make sure that you really, really desire at the onset of creation. And so you're not judging and creating some rather uncomfortable things. Make sense?
Yeah.
Does that answer your question?
Oh, yes, thanks.
All right. Anything else?
I've got a completely different question. What about all the church bells and cowbells and bells that humans put on Earth? How do they affect?
Well, most of those are entrainment, and training the mind to have a particular reaction. So it's utilized as a control mechanism in many ways. So, when someone hears a church bell, it makes them think, I need to get myself in order and get myself there. I've got to be controlled and manipulated. Because I can't think outside the box. It's that religious control. And it does the same thing for animals when they hear particular sounds, when they're conditioned with a particular action combined with the sound. It creates, that Pavlovian response. They know exactly what they're supposed to do when they hear that particular tone of sound. And we hate to tell you all this, but you're also conditioned that way when you hear particular tones and sounds. If you think about hearing the first couple bars of a song and you've got to finish it in your head, you're conditioned because you've got to finish it. All right? So they're all conditioning mechanisms, because if you're not conditioned, guess what? You say, well, those are interesting. How can we build on that? And what interesting melodies can we go from there? It's not always the same couple of notes. Because that's rather boring in the higher realms. You think, well, why do we always keep going back there? Why can't we create something new? We don't think in that way necessarily. We might like to revisit a frequency, but we're also more curious in seeing what else can we create. How can we alter it?
I have a question to that thing. If we create like sounds or something, if we use energy or sounds that control other people or society, why these people who create this, are these also like, are these other kind of what kind of people are these? Like, what's their purpose? Is it like, do we need them to have that separation? Or
remember, a lot of this was started at a time where that there was a memory of how tone and sound affected the human body. All right, and it got passed on, and most people forgot it. But there were a few who still remembered and still utilized it. All right, or they came across the knowledge of how to utilize it. But for most people, they're completely oblivious and have no idea. You look at your advertising agencies and they know exactly what to do to get you to buy. It's all subliminal. All right, your field reacts to these vibrations and these images. and the way things are said and the way things are phrased. Even the way we just said that. All right? That elicits a particular response, and your physical body is used to releasing particular chemicals when it experiences a particular frequency, and it goes through a physiological response to it. So who are these people? That's a whole nother discussion. But let's just say that's something that you can choose to be a part of or choose to become aware of. So that when you hear these particular sounds, check in with yourself. How are you feeling about that sound? And you'll be very amazed at often the feelings that get triggered that you had no idea were there. You know, you hear a church bell. What gets triggered for you? Do all your religious issues get triggered? Do you feel like you've got something to be guilty about, or you're not good enough or clean enough? Or, you know, there are a whole huge wide range. Or, you know, what is a sense memory, in essence, that you have from hearing that tone of sound? But most of you are focused on other things and not present in the now to perceive how that's impacting you. And it doesn't matter whether other people are putting out that control signal. If you are aware of how you're feeling and where you're vibrating, then you choose, you know, to choose to stay in a particular frequency or not, you know, to be altered or not. To see, all right, I felt altered, so there must be some fear still there for me to look at and to clear. And that's the whole purpose, to be aware. Otherwise, you're going to hear it and it's not going to alter you in any way. You'll say, interesting, and keep moving.
Seems to me like the old saying that John Lennon once said, that life is what happens to you right now while you're busy making other plans.
Yes, most of you are focused elsewhere. And, you know, another way to see how that affects you energetically, you know, we talked about timelines, and in this dimension, if you can think of yourself, your soul's energy, as a spotlight coming down onto a string, and a really tight, strong, bright light, that's your soul's energy focused on the now in the moment. When you start thinking about the past or the future, it's like that solid beam starts to kind of dissipate, and the light kind of flows off to a couple other strings right beside it. There's not as much power there. You're draining your own energy. That's what it's like when you're worried about the past or the future. You don't have as much energy and it's not as focused. All right?
I have one more question.
Yes?
As far as I understood, the purpose of living in the third dimension is also to experience.
Yes.
So, and talking earlier about certain pieces of music that may have low frequency energy, but couldn't it be true that you choose consciously to listen to one of these pieces?
Yes.
Have the experience?
Yes.
So it makes it something that helps you develop instead of being something negative?
Yes, exactly. So what we're saying with that, to choose, is just to be conscious, to be aware. Don't be thinking about something else and exposing yourself to this music and taking on that vibration. You're not present to say, how do I feel about this piece of music? But you're constantly creating and drawing things into your environment. All right. So if there's a piece of music that perhaps has a lower vibration, and you're turning on the radio and you turn to that particular music, then yes, you have some sort of attraction to it. Now the question is, do you like that vibration, or do you want to choose a new one? And you've got to be present to do that, to figure it out. And the whole point is, to go back, of being in the third dimension is to experience, yes, to experience duality, specifically, and the sensation of separation. Just want to throw that in there as well. So do you understand what we're saying? You are very much correct, but you've got to choose now. We're trying to get you to be conscious now of what you're experiencing in the moment. How does it make you feel? Is this the vibration that you want to stay in or not? Most people are completely unconscious about it. And then, they listen to something and their mood is altered because it's trying to get their attention. You create and attract everything in your external world as a reflection of where you are vibrationally. And that's how the game was set up, because you knew you wouldn't recognize vibrations internally in the same way, so you created a physical reality to reflect it all back to you. So your physical reality is reflecting absolutely every emotional experience back to you. And what you want to do is just try to be as present as you possibly can. To say, do I like this vibration that I'm experiencing in this moment? Do I want to repeat it? Or is it time to make a new vibrational choice? There is no right or wrong here either. They're just vibrational choices. If there's one thing you can leave here with today, everything is simply about a vibrational choice. We assign no value to it. It is all source energy. It is not right, it is not wrong. It just is. And do you like where you're at and what you are experiencing?
So here I come. When we work with preschool children and percussion instruments, there's a particular child who covers her ears. Does that mean that that vibration, that I can let her go out of the classroom to not experience that? Because that's the only symbol they can do.
Yeah, she's having a very difficult time with that sound. And in particular, we will tell you with this child, it is not. She's not a being that's been here very often.
Okay.
So being on Earth and being exposed to all these different vibrations is very, very challenging. And especially with children, they still have a lot of sensitivity.
Yes.
They haven't numbed themselves like the rest of you have yet. Mm-hmm. So it can be very, very challenging for them when they hear it. There are some worlds which are incredibly, incredibly sensitive to sound. It's like the air. You could wave your hand through the air and you would play music. Mm-hmm. As the vibration, you are pushing frequencies and creating music as you move. All right. And also out of that you also spark color. So it's like the atmosphere is like every time you move it's like a brush stroke with music.
So those percussion things are for young children below the age of 6? Is that too intense then?
Not always, but particularly in the one that you're looking at, it has to do with her integrating into the body and having a challenging time. There are interesting things that happen with children. They're very excited to see how things work in the dense physical, and that's why they like the percussion, because there's resistance and solidity of matter. And so it's a very different feeling. That's why children are so active and they like to play and run and tumble, because it's so different to have such a dense body. It operates in a very different way. There's so much resistance. That it's, from the small child's perspective, it's fascinating, especially when you first get back in the body. And if you haven't been in one for a long time, you say, wow, I forgot, it's so dense and so heavy.
So because in a way for the indigos, it's kind of a great expression, but for the crystals, they kind of freak out at it.
Well, also you have to understand with children, they are plugged into, those who've come in specifically in the last 10 years, mm-hmm. have come in because there's not enough time to integrate into the body and then transmute everything and move back out. They come plugged in already to a fourth dimensional consciousness. They slip in and out enough so that they're not remanifesting a fourth dimensional body as well, but and they're plugged into enough of the 3D stuff to keep them here and dense, but that's why they have so many difficulties in communicating and socializing, because they are already part of a collective and they have a very difficult time comprehending how you are functioning and why you're doing some of the things that you're doing, because you perceive yourselves as individuals and you take action and they think you're hurting the whole, and it's very painful to them because they feel it, they experience it. they're going to be your greatest teachers. They are already plugged in, and they're going to show you what it means to be part of that and to be connected to the collective. All right? So, let us talk here for just a minute about the color of sound. Again, it's frequency. And you interpret frequency in different ways in your body as a feeling, as a sensation. If you were to talk about the word angry, what color would you associate with it? Yes, immediately you all know red. That's anger. Well, why? Because it's of the lower vibrational spectrum. All right, and that's what you assign to it. And it's the same thing with music. Music has color to it. You assign an emotion, and you assign a color, and you assign a sound to a frequency. So you can start to play around with it a bit more, especially when you're starting to do healing. You can layer the healing, so you've got a color and you've got the tone and sound. And also, if you're able to see colors or sense a color, you can turn that into a sound. What sound do you associate with that color? What note do you associate with that color? So that it's just another way for you to kind of bridge the gap to create, and new ways for you to think about creating. And you know, again, when you start to play around, there's no right, there's no wrong. Just play with it. Have fun with it. All right? We're not going to talk, we don't want to say too much about it, but we want you to be aware that there is a correlation. All right? And they are in different frequency ranges. There is some difference in structure of some of the frequencies that you perceive in your physical vehicle as light. But it's just a different structure. It's just a different structure, the way the frequency is combined and put together.
Does it make any sense to assign certain colors to certain tones?
You can, yes. When you start to do that, it's almost like it will open up a whole new world for you in how you experienced music before. You're going to see it. You're going to see music. It's not going to be a one-dimensional experience where you hear it. You hear and see it, and then you hear, see, and feel it. So it'll open up it'll be a whole vibrational experience instead of a limited experience.
Is the color and the tone for everybody the same, or is it different colors for different personalities?
It's pretty much the same. It's pretty much the same across the board. It's universal. As we all say, red, red for anger. You're all on board for that. But it's if you would think of a note of C as being one particular octave, and you go up, 40 octaves, and then you're into light, and then you've got that part of the spectrum that correlates to that particular note.
Do they know it's correlated to the chakras? And
yes.
The colors of the chakras?
Remember, everything's got a frequency to it, yes. So, remember the different parts of your body. Your liver's got one particular. So this whole swath of your body, the combined energy that's there, not only in the physical vehicle, but remember, the energetic creates the physical. So yes, there is a correlation between the vibration and your chakras, your energetic centers. So all that area of your body has a similar vibration. It's not identical, but it's very, very similar. And very much in resonance when you start out, when you've got a healthy vehicle, all right? And if you were to play them all together, if you play all the chakras together, it would sound like a beautiful scale or a beautiful run.
Would that mean that the first chakra, which is associated with the color red, would then be a C?
We want to be very careful about assigning a specific value, because it also depends on the vibrational level of the person. Because if you've got someone who is a higher vibration, it may not necessarily be a C. It may, if you think of the C as the bass tone, there may be other notes in there that are part of the harmonics of it, that they would actually be a little farther up the scale. They're higher in vibration, so they may not be the C. They may start out at a different note and kind of move up from there. It depends on the overall frequency of an individual.
As a musician, it also seems to me that what is much more important, at least in my perception, that of the tone and the name of the tone, since they repeat themselves in octaves on and on, is the range. Like if you have the tone C, it exists both here and here and here. And here. The range seems to me to have a lot more to say in terms of manifestation or to vibrational quality than whether it's exactly a C or C sharp or a D. Is that so?
To some extent. Remember, we're going to go back to the Platonic solids. So range, the lower you go in range, you start out with a simple Platonic solid. The higher you go in range, you have very complex combinations of the solids. All right, it's like, you start with a foundation, the building blocks. The lower the range, the simpler it is. The higher you go in range, the more complex it is. The more that you have the more you have things that have been built one on top of another in order to get to that level. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Does that answer your question?
To me it always seemed to me as if I met people to whom it's very important that one particular note, say the note of E or F or whatever, is assigned to a certain either chakra, as energy center. And to me it never really made sense, because my experience doing the music and toning was and always and is continuously so that it means much more what range we are operating in, since that at least in this 3D physical, the way music and tone and sound works is that, for example, if you have a bass tone, that there's so much more potential for certain things than there would be if we moved that very same tone, whether it be C or whatever, up an octave or 2 octaves.
Yes, and it depends on how you're working with matter and dense matter. It's a low vibration is going to, the oscillation is going to oftentimes move it more, all right, move more in general, more matter than something that's a high frequency. It would be like a general shaking or a laser point with the energy, because it's so quick and it is so compressed. So it does, to some extent, impact your manifestation process. You're going to use one vibration over another in order to create that projection of an emotion or an idea or an object that you want to manifest. An object that you want to manifest is probably going to be of a lower resonance and than something that you're trying to get across as opposed to an emotion, to work with telepathy. It's going to be of a higher vibration in a different range. Things that you want to manifest that are physical are in a lower vibrational range. Does it have to be exact? Is it always got to be F? Is it always got to be right on pitch? Again, your intention is far more important. And you can't stick with one particular note for a chakra, because that may not be what you need to clear that chakra.
Never made sense to me either.
I mean, granted, eventually, when you hold that vibration long enough, things will start to kind of bend to that. They'll start to, you'll start to replace patternings and things with that particular vibration. But there's an easier, faster way, and that's to find that matching frequency that's going to nullify it, that'll allow you to integrate it. It's going to create the interference pattern to allow you to drop it. It's much faster. It's a much faster way of operating. All right?
You mentioned before that every organ also has a tone. And all of a sudden I thought that means that each and everyone sitting here with a physical body is in a way the representation of an organic symphony of
That's a beautiful way of looking at it, yes.
Yeah, like if I would only listen to the music that you are emitting, that I have not paid attention to inaudibly, I could hear if the music is in balance, if it is in harmony, or if it's off sync. Would it make sense that whatever I perceive there coming from the other person, or from myself for that matter, that I tune into that and see, okay, is it a symphony that I would like to listen to, or is it some that is off?
Yes.
And then start picking up these tones and adding them, or rearranging the composition?
Yes, because, you know, most of you, if you think of your body as a symphony, you know, you're a bit out of tune.
Yeah.
You know, you've got some players who are a little flat. So you've got to get everybody back on, you know, in line, so to speak. So that's what you work on energetically in the body. But yes, you all need to start listening to your bodies, and that is one way through tone and sound that your body communicates. If you can tune in, some people are better at tuning in other ways.
Mm-hmm.
You know, they're better at feeling it as opposed to hearing it.
Mm-hmm.
But yes, certainly listening to your body or listening to other people's bodies, and does it sound like it's in tune as you move up and you listen, as you go through each section of the orchestra.
Exactly.
Is this section in tune? All right? You all sound great. Next one. Not so much. We need to do some work here. All right? And you in particular we need to work on. All right, so that's one way as a healer you can start to think about working with your clients. Listening to the body. What music is it playing?
Would it be more effective to have that person then make a certain tone and find it? Or to add that from the outside, so to speak, to that person when I sense it?
Probably through you, but what you can also play is a series of tones and find the ones that they are the most uncomfortable listening to. Sometimes if you're uncomfortable listening to anything, there's an attraction there. You've got some attachment to it. Otherwise, you're not going to get any sort of rise out of any of the notes, because they are part of the whole, they are part of divine source. They are positive and negative, and you have integrated both. If you are uncomfortable with any of them, then you've got an attraction. You've got judgment set up.
To return to the young child, was Steiner then on an idea with the rhythmics, and which involves movement and sound and painting? Is that the idea, or how can I create for each child to have music, sounds, and painting, expression of color?
Well, they can do it together. You can play a piece of music and ask them to paint the music.
Hey.
You know, they'll understand exactly what you're talking about. There won't be a question, what do you mean? They'll say, all right.
Yeah.
And so they'll paint it.
Do I provide the music, or I let them pick?
Well, when you've got a group of children, it's a little difficult, but so you can go ahead and pick for them. But, you know, you might recommend, well, when you go home, why don't you try this? Why don't you paint your favorite piece of music? That can be a little homework assignment. You know, if the children are just a little bit older, or even if they're looking for something to do on the side. But you can see, it'll be very interesting. You can use it as an experiment. See a piece of music that it feels uplifting to you, that you feel has a nice quality, and then one that's not so nice.
That's brilliant.
And see what they paint. They're going to be vastly different.
Yes.
Vastly different. Children are far more in tune with that vibration, and they'll pick the colors that are the music. They will pick the colors that are the music. Yes.
I would like to ask something that Katrina had asked before, to ask you about, as we were talking about the different frequencies and the sounds of the body with the different things. What happens if you make love to somebody whose frequency is vastly different than yours?
It depends on whether you clear your frequency out or not. A lot of times what you all will do, you open up energetically and you share information. So if you don't, when you separate, close that down and expel it if it's not appropriate, then you take it on as your own, and it's in your field. And so you start manifesting it because it's in your field. So you got to make sure you clear it out and just see yourself letting go. And this you do regularly. You know, you don't have to do it immediately. So, excuse me, I have to clear out my auric field now. But you all should be doing this on a regular basis anyway, and it doesn't, when you are intimate with someone, you're opening yourself up much further to exchange those vibrations. You still do it with people as you're walking down the street or having conversations with friends. You still exchange energy, but there's a bigger exchange in that moment. And you just need to make sure you clear it out. And there are a couple exercises you can do. If you want to use tone and sound, you can. Starting and utilizing the vowel tones that we started with here. And the actual notes don't matter. You can start wherever you feel comfortable, whatever you feel vibrates. Make a note, make a sound, and keep playing around with it until you feel the one that makes your root chakra hum, until you feel that part of your body hum. Then you know that's the right one. All right, and then move on up to the next one. Wait until you feel, just above your hips start to vibrate. And then right above your belly button. And then your heart, your throat, your third eye, and your crown. As you start to make those sounds, you've cleared out your energetic field. That's one way to help you to do that. And just affirm, set the intent with this tone and sound that it is clearing out your field of anything that's no longer appropriate. Set the intent that you're clearing your field. Remember, intent, so important. We'd give you other visuals, but we think the tone and sound is just fine since we're talking about tone and sound. There are lots of ways to get there. But there's still some sort of exchange that you're looking for if you're with someone who is not a vibrational match. So there's usually something in your field that is.
I was just talking about, mostly young teenagers who have frequent partners.
Yes.
And especially women keep the energy much longer, I guess, than men do because we get it in it.
Well, that's not necessarily true. And the reason we say this is because men suppress a lot of it. For the women, a lot of it comes up, so you just assume that it's there. But a lot of men will just suppress the energy and suppress and suppress.
I didn't understand what you mean.
So they're both taking it on and holding on to it. The difference is that women start to bring it up more, and so you notice it more in their behaviors, and you hear it more out of their mouths. Whereas men suppress that energy. They take it on and then they suppress it. So it's there in both fields, and one just is suppressed more than the other, and that has to do with social conditioning. And we're talking about generalities here. We're not saying that happens with every person, but in general, how you all are conditioned. Men are conditioned not to express their emotions. Women are supposed to be the emotional ones. Men don't go there. All right? And that's what you're learning, that you all are emotional beings and that you express it. That you're able to express your emotions freely.